right, committee, welcome to utilities and our final day before turnaround. And of course, we will have, I don't think we start back until the Tuesday after the turnaround. So what we want to start with today is approval of minutes. We submitted minutes to the committee via email and would like to get approval on January 19th, 20th, 24th, 25th, 26th, 27th, and February 1st. And committee, any discussion on those minutes? Senator Francisco?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I apologize, but I wondered if we could just go over what the minutes say about the discussion on, I think it was Senate Bill 353, when you were concerned about the testimony from one of our conferees, and I just think we should be careful about what we're saying about that, and if you can remind me the date.
That would be, let me ask. Oh, those minutes have not been done yet. Those have not been done yet. We are still working on those.
I appreciate that, and I hadn't seen that, and I just wanted to make sure that I was
Sure.
not letting something go, so thank you.
Absolutely. Any other discussion, committee? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Got a motion by Senator Olson, second by Senator Fagg. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion passes. Minutes are approved. We had a discussion last week about Senate Bill 349. I thought it was a good discussion. Brought up the fact that, obviously the rates in Kansas are very important. And I think a lot of the members of the committee and probably in the audience are willing to work on this and continue to do so. Both sides brought up some great points. I believe what we're going to do, though, is pass on working Senate Bill 349 today and see what we can do after turnaround, maybe get some of the stakeholders together and discuss further where we can come to terms on that. The other discussion I wanted to have is we had started a discussion on Senate Bill 324, which had to do with voiding leases on wind facilities. And one of the points that was brought up was that there potential conflict with law. And I did a little bit of research over the weekend, committee, and found out that there are oil and gas leases that do essentially let a person who's leasing for oil and gas out of the lease if there's no oil production. I've got an oil and gas lease here that basically says, it implies if oil and gas is not produced, the lease will become null and void. And there's also provisions for actions that can be taken. So with regard to Senate Bill 324, it's not unprecedented to give people the latitude to get out of the lease if there's no production, which was the intent of Senate Bill 324. With regard to the zone versus unzoned counties, that's where the conflict seems to be happening an awful lot. And I want to bring the revisor into this and ask Nick about this issue, because I think that obviously we don't want to step on those unzoned counties, but maybe look at the language a little bit. With regard to, and I'm on some of these others, not just 324, but it's also 323. Any thoughts that how we could do that so that we're not forcing unzoned counties to rezone or something like that, but give them some latitude with how we do that? Any thoughts on that?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think what the committee has been hearing through some of the conversation on Senate Bill 324 is specifically in regards to that avoidance provision, where the wind energy developer needs to get a certificate of site compatibility or a conditional use permit issued if it's required. And I think what the committee has been hearing is that those conditional use permits are typically used only in zone counties to allow for development or construction of a facility that doesn't typically fall within that zoning regulation. And then that certificate of site compatibility, what the committee has been hearing through some of the testimony and arguments is that there's not quite clarity on what a certificate of site compatibility is and how the county would go about issuing that. I presume that the county could, if they want a wind development in their area, the county could figure out some way to issue a certificate of site compatibility, but the process by which that is approved and done through, I'm not quite certain on. But I think that's the issue with regard to the county process is the use of those two terms and how the county would get, especially to that certificate of site compatibility in an unzoned county.
So it sounds like we need to clarify that, define that a little bit better before we go down that path. Would you agree?
We could certainly work on doing that.
Okay. Committee, any other questions about this? Senator Francisco?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You were alluding to the gas and oil leases, and I'm assuming that that is limited to not having acted on those leases, not having drilled a well, or?
Actually, with regard to that, if the well doesn't produce, so they've drilled a well and nothing has been produced, then the lease could become null and void. So when we're talking about the wind, and by the way, on another article in this lease I have, it talks about some 120-day threshold, and I'm aware of some others that we did research on that after a year, it could be null and void. And so the concern that we're bringing up with Senate Bill 324 is that some of these leases for wind farms or a turbine on your own personal property can be very, very long. And if, the idea is if you're going a long period of time where there's been no action, no construction, or if there has been construction, that there's no electricity produced because the thing is not operational, then the person who is doing that lease has at least a mechanism, an option to get out of that lease, similar to what they're doing on the oil and gas. And so after I did some research and found that, at least I found some support for what we're attempting to do with Senate Bill 324.
Mr. Chair? So my comments were just the new section 1 in 324 just sets some parameters, to say that every instrument that conveys a lease, shall include certain things. And I'm not sure that that's true in the oil and gas leases. So I think if the idea is to talk about a particular length of time that should be available, one, I think we should hear from wind developers about what the experience has been in terms of the length of time. It probably takes longer to develop a wind farm than it does to drill a well, and especially if you're working on property owned by a number of different landowners. And I would like to look at limiting it to just what is the time that lease, if something hasn't been done, can be ended, rather than trying to at the same time put in particular restrictions on those leases.
Reasonable enough. Senator Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we heard from many conferees, some of them were professors, what it would do. I was thinking over the weekend a little bit about this. We've got these oil leases, some of them been in effect for over 100 years in Kansas oil and gas. You're talking more about a lease of someone drilling, but once they hit, then there's other terms in that lease that take over, and then them leases are not going to be interrupted until that well's interrupted or plays out. in some places, it's literally been going for hundreds of years. But then I got thinking, what about cell phone towers? I mean, we've got these towers all over Kansas City, et cetera. Are we going to go in and interrupt them? To me, I think we're just opening a Pandora's box of contract law here. And why are we doing this? I don't know. I struggle with it, and, I'm not going to support it. And so, I mean.
I think you made your point on that last week, and I didn't intend on working it today.
Okay.
But I wanted to have this discussion because I think that what we've got to do is come to some kind of realization that, like in the oil and gas industry, yes, if you hit, these leases are still valid and they cannot be broken. However, like the oil and gas, if they're, again, here's a lessor that has a certain amount of time or expectation that there's going to be a turbine on their land, and nothing is happening. There's no production, there's no construction, and this ties up their land for other uses, farming. And as to your argument, somebody owns their own private property, wants to have the ability to do with that property what they want. And that's what 324 would do for the wind, the same that it would do with the oil and gas.
I think they've probably entered into an agreement, that's what they want to do with their property. I could be wrong. These wind projects, people don't build them for 3 or 4 years and then decommission them. They're putting out a lot of money, and there's people financing, there's all kinds of projections that are put together. These landowners know that it's not going to be a 3 or 4 year deal. And quite frankly, I think, if 324, these two bills pass, they would be probably some of the most greatly injured ones suing the state. So I don't know, in my mind, that's what this bill does. It busts them and it runs this industry out of the state. And, who would loan on a wind project in Kansas if these bills pass? Probably nobody. So what we're saying is we want them to move out of Kansas and go to Oklahoma where they were before.
There are 4,000 turbines in Kansas already. I don't think we're running them out of the state. And again, this looking long term, these wind turbines don't last nearly as long as, say, a Wolf Creek nuclear power plant that's been in operation for decades. They are broken at times, and they may become decommissioned because they are inoperable. And at that point, that's where part of this comes in. And that's why I wanted to have this discussion today. Like I said, we're not going to work 324, but I wanted to bring up some of these points for people to think about, and just let the committee know that we're going to continue to look at this issue so that we can protect Kansas property rights as much as humanly possible. So I think that's it for today, committee. Just wanted to bring up that discussion. Thank you very much for your time, and we will see you after turnaround.
Chairman, would you let us know when you're going to work these bills, or
Well, these, like 323, 324,
if you're going to bring them back up, would you let us know?
oh, certainly would. Absolutely,
that.
sure would.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Thank you, committee. We are adjourned.